Welcome to Movie Tellers. Today we'll be recapping the thrilling horror action movie Abigail. A group of kidnappers infiltrates a lavish mansion and abducts a young girl named Abigail, a talented ballet dancer. After her dance session, she returns home, unaware that intruders have slipped inside. They sedate her, zip her into a bag, and drive away. The group later arrives at a secluded mansion, where they are greeted by a man named Lambert. He lays down the rules: no real names, no backstories. To prevent being traced, he confiscates their phones and informs them that they must wait 24 hours for a ransom demand of $50 million to be answered by the girl's father. To maintain anonymity, Lambert assigns them code names: Frank, Dean, Sammy, Peter, Joey, and Rickles. He then leaves, locking them inside. As they settle in, they start getting to know each other. Frank, a sharp and observant man, challenges them to guess something about him for a $100 bet. Joey accepts and expertly deduces that Frank was once a cop, analyzing his stance, footwear, and subtle gestures. She wins the bet, impressing everyone. Others join in, testing Joey's ability to read people. She correctly pegs Peter as someone who was bullied as a child and later became aggressive to compensate. When Sammy joins the game, Joey correctly identifies her as a runaway hacker. As Joey walks away, Frank turns the tables, analyzing her instead. He accuses her of being a junkie. The revelation stuns her, and Frank coldly warns her never to cross him again. Unsettled, Joey checks on Abigail, finding her blindfolded and crying. The girl begs for reassurance, pleading with Joey not to let anyone hurt her. Moved, Joey makes a pinky promise to protect her. However, Abigail ominously warns, "You took the wrong girl. My father doesn't care about me." As Joey prepares to leave, Abigail eerily adds, "I'm sorry for what's about to happen to you."
I'm sorry about what's gonna happen to you.
Disturbed, Joey confronts Frank, demanding to know who Abigail's father really is. But Frank reveals he doesn't know. Frank, suddenly alarmed, bursts into the room, ready to interrogate Abigail, only to freeze at the sight before him. The blindfold was gone. His jaw tightened, rage flickering in his eyes. He stormed forward, his voice sharp and unrelenting. "Did you see my face?" he demanded, seething with frustration. Abigail met his gaze, silent but defiant, as tension crackled in the air like a live wire. She tearfully reveals her father's name, Christophe Lazar. The name terrifies Frank. He rushes downstairs, declaring that he wants out. Then, he drops the bombshell. They're screwed. The girl is Christophe Lazar's daughter. As the name sinks in, chilling stories about Lazar begin to surface. A man feared for his violent reputation, he commands a ruthless criminal empire, leaving destruction in his wake. Joey immediately suggests they cut their losses and leave, maybe even make an anonymous call. After all, she hasn't seen their faces. But Dean shuts that down. She has seen Frank's face. Besides, he isn't ready to walk away. $7 million is life-changing, and he won't give that up so easily. Frank, always the pragmatist, proposes a different plan. They pretend they have no idea who her father is. They take the money, vanish, and never look back. But if they're going to pull it off, they'll have to be careful. He warns everyone to stay sharp. One wrong move, and they might not live to spend a dime. Later, as Dean heads to the kitchen, a mysterious door creaks open behind him. As he cautiously investigates, he finds only a rat. But just as he turns to leave, something unseen violently yanks him into the darkness. His screams echo through the house, but no one hears them. Sammy, hearing faint noises, calls out to Dean but gets no response. She ventures into the room and finds him sitting eerily still in a chair. As she steps closer, his head suddenly falls off. She screams in horror, vomiting at the gruesome sight. The others rush in, trying to comprehend what just happened. Rickles, shaken, recalls a chilling rumor about Lazar's top assassin, Valdez. A man known for his signature decapitations, Valdez once butchered 3 of Lazar's enemies while they were in FBI custody. If Dean was just decapitated, that could mean Valdez is already here. Suspicion spreads. Is one of them Valdez? Tensions rise as Rickles tries to leave, but the doors and windows suddenly seal shut, trapping them inside. In a panic, Rickles runs to retrieve his gun, only to find it missing. Joey rushes back to Abigail and demands to know if anyone else has been in the room. Abigail, in tears, confesses that Frank is hiding something. She reveals that Frank told her he works for Lazar. In shock, Joey realizes Frank isn't just any criminal. Frank is Valdez. Then Joey goes to Rickles and tell him about Frank. Rickles and Joey devise a plan to confront him. As they split up, Joey suddenly hears a strange noise. She turns around and finds Rickles standing completely still. As she cautiously approaches, his lifeless body collapses to the ground. Downstairs, she finds Frank and holds him at gunpoint, demanding answers. Confused, Frank denies knowing anything, but when Joey accuses him of being Valdez, he orders Peter to kill Abigail. Peter storms into the room and points his gun at Abigail, but the terrified girl bursts into tears. Before he can pull the trigger, Joey intervenes, saving her just in time. Frank enters, aiming his gun at Joey. A tense standoff begins. But then, Abigail surprises them by taking off her cuffs off her wrist. Abigail stands up. Her eyes change, and in an instant, she lets out a deafening, supernatural scream. The group freezes in fear. Abigail lunges at Peter, baring fangs. Frank reacts instinctively, shooting her in the head. She falls, only to sit up moments later, instantly healing. Realizing what they're dealing with, Frank slams the door shut. The group scrambles, trying to figure out how to kill a vampire. Frank instructs Sammy to find garlic, Peter to get wooden stakes, but Joey hesitates. She insists Abigail is too smart. They need a better plan. As they search, eerie music echoes from above. They rush upstairs to find Abigail dancing, holding Dean's severed body. Sammy attacks first, but is swiftly overpowered. Abigail easily sniffs the garlic without issue. She knocks Sammy down and begins strangling her. Frank and Peter rush in, but are effortlessly thrown aside. As Peter desperately stabs her with a crucifix, Abigail grabs it and repeatedly stabs him instead. Frank tries sneaking up behind her, but she grabs his hand mid-strike and drives a wooden stake into his leg. The survivors retreat, realizing they are completely outmatched. They run back to the room where Joey is waiting, but nowhere is safe. Joey reveals a sedative and confidently tells the group that she knows it will work. After all, it knocked Abigail out before. The four split up to search for her. Meanwhile, Sammy stumbles into a room, slipping and falling into a pit filled with rotting corpses. She screams, struggling to pull herself out. At the same time, Abigail bursts out of the shadows, chasing Peter through the mansion. The chase ends when Peter tumbles down the staircase, landing hard. Frank rushes in, only to be knocked down by Abigail, who pounces on him, ready to sink her teeth in. Just in time, Joey lunges with the sedative, but Abigail smacks it from her hands. Joey desperately reaches for the needle, struggling to grab it through a narrow gap. Abigail tightens her grip around Frank's throat, choking the life out of him. Sammy leaps in to help, but Abigail bites her hand, sending her reeling in pain. The distraction is enough. Peter tackles Abigail to the ground, giving Joey the chance to inject her with the sedative. Abigail's body goes limp. The group locks Abigail inside a cage. Panic sets in when Sammy realizes she's been bitten. She knows she'll soon turn into a vampire. Desperate for answers, Joey strikes a deal. If Abigail tells them how to escape, they'll let her go. Abigail refuses, but then she begins to taunt them. "Haven't you wondered why you're here?" she sneers. "I planned all of this." She reveals that Lambert, the man who recruited them, works for her. She calls them out by their real names and lists their crimes against her father, Christophe Lazar. They were never meant to collect a ransom. Abigail lured them here to kill them, to feed on them as a tribute to her father. It's clear that each of them has a history of bad business with her father Lazar. Desperate for his love and approval, she preys on them, something she has been doing for years. As the group recoils in horror, Frank lingers behind watching her. Abigail smirks. He offers her a deal. If she tells him how to escape, he'll set her free. Amused, she describes a hidden passage behind a bookshelf. But before Frank can act, she suddenly slams the cage door against him, knocking him unconscious. She effortlessly dances out of the cage, ready to feast. Joey rushes in and breaks a window, flooding the room with sunlight. Abigail recoils, screaming as the light scorches her, blowing off one of her hands. She runs into the shadows, her severed limb beginning to regenerate. The survivors regroup in the library, standing in the safety of the sunlight. Sammy suggests shutting down the mansion's power. If they cut the electricity, the security system might fail, unlocking the doors. They split up to find the power source before nightfall. As Sammy searches, her bite wound suddenly heals. She gasps as her body begins to change. Abigail is controlling her now. Meanwhile, Peter reaches a dead end. When he turns back, Sammy's there, fangs bared. She lunges and sinks her teeth into his neck, killing him instantly. Hearing the commotion, Joey and Frank rush to find Peter, only to see Sammy standing over his lifeless body. She turns toward them and charges. They run, leading her into a sunlit area. At the last moment, Joey uses a reflective silver plate to amplify the light, blasting Sammy into pieces. As they catch their breath, a hidden bookshelf creaks open. Cautiously, they step inside and find Lambert. Frank moves to attack him, but Lambert's face twists into something monstrous. He too is a vampire. He slams Joey against the wall and reveals his story. Abigail turned him into her puppet after discovering he helped expose 3 of her father's top lieutenants. Ever since, he's been luring her father's enemies here for her to hunt, but Lambert is tired of being her servant. He offers Frank a deal. If he joins him, they can kill Abigail, take down Lazar and rule his empire together. Frank agrees. Lambert bites him and gives him his blood to drink, turning him into a vampire, and offers him Joey as his first meal. Frank hesitates for a moment, then suddenly turns on Lambert, driving a stake through his heart. Lambert shrieks before crumbling into dust. Frank, cold and starving, grows desperate for blood. Suddenly, Abigail walks in, laughing sinisterly. Everything is going according to her plan. Without warning, she lunges at Frank, attacking him. But Frank, far stronger, overpowers her and sinks his teeth into her flesh, drinking her blood. Seizing the moment, Joey rushes to the door, grabs her phone, and runs. But as she escapes, she reaches a dead-end street. Heart pounding, she quickly dials her son, whispering a final "I love you." Meanwhile, intoxicated by Abigail's blood, Frank turns his attention to Joey. He slams her against the wall repeatedly, savoring the pain he inflicts. Gripping her by the throat, he lifts her high, then hurls her toward the ground. But just before impact, Abigail, barely clinging to life, reaches out and catches her, saving her at the last moment. "I'm too weak to fight him alone," she admits. "Help me kill him, and I'll let you live. You'll see your son again." With no other choice, Joey agrees. They attack Frank together, but he is stronger than both of them. He easily overpowers them, impaling Joey against a wall. Then he pins Abigail down, sinking his fangs into her neck, trying to drain her completely. As Abigail weakly lifts a trembling hand, she locks eyes with Joey, silently reminding her of their pinky swear. Having had enough drinking from Abigail's blood, he drops her and forcefully drags Joey through the spike pole, inflicting even more pain. Then he bites her, turning her into a vampire. With a commanding tone, he hands her a wooden stake and orders her to kill Abigail. Slowly, she approaches Abigail, but at the last moment, she turns and attempts to stab Frank instead. He reacts swiftly, blocking the attack and knocking her away. Seizing the opportunity, Abigail and Joey join forces, overpowering Frank. With a final, forceful thrust, they drive a wooden stake through his heart. He lets out a final, anguished cry before exploding into ashes. Joey stares in shock, gasping for breath.
You're fine, now that he's dead.
Abigail, exhausted, turns away. "Go see your son," she tells Joey. As Joey stumbles toward the exit, a chilling hand lands on her shoulder. She freezes. It's Christophe Lazar. Just as he prepares to strike, Abigail steps in. "Stop, Dad," she says firmly. Lazar studies her for a moment, then turns to Joey. "Go," he says. "It's almost dinner time." Without hesitation, Joey runs. She jumps into a van and speeds off into the night. If you enjoy this recap, please subscribe to the channel. Thank you.